Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the AI Interconnect podcast. I'm your host, Laurent, and on this show, I speak with founders and operators building real companies, solving real problems, and making AI work in practice, not just in theory. And AI Interconnect is a platform where these conversations happen openly with no pitch, no insights, just insights, experience, and perspective from people in the field. Today, I'm joined by Abhinash Bhargava, founder of BetterBrain. And BetterBrain help company implement AI and automate workflow by combining a strong infrastructure layer with customized solution tailored for each client. Abhinash, Abhishek, thank you for being here. Very happy to have you on the show.
Thank you, Laurent. Really excited to be on and yeah, excited to chat with you.
Wonderful. Let's start with your background so listeners understand the path that led you here. You come across as someone who thinks deeply about systems and infrastructure, not just surface level AI tools. Um, Abhishek, how did your background lead you to build Better Brain and focus on this hybrid model of software and services?
Yeah, I guess I've always been really excited about workflow automation. So when I mean, my dad has diabetes, and I used to basically text him every night to make sure he would take insulin. And so one day I realized I could write a few lines of code and automate the whole thing. So ended up kind of teaching myself how to code, built that bot. And it kind of snowballed from there. I got into web scraping and then algo trading. And so, generally speaking, I think using data to automate workflows has always been kind of core to why I got into technology in the first place. Um, and I mean, I think when I was starting Better Brain, the landscape, and even still, I think the landscape basically looks like you have a bunch of product companies and you have a bunch of services companies. The product companies often don't really integrate tightly enough with the company's existing workflows and processes. And so as a result, people have to change their behavior pretty significantly to actually get value out of these products, right? Which people don't really change much. And so they don't. And so these products often see poor adoption, poor retention. And I think with a lot of the services businesses, it's kind of the flip side of the spectrum where they have everything is bespoke, right? So it's more expensive, it's time consuming. And so the reason I started Better Brain was I think there's a best of both worlds situation there, right? And so that's kind of what I'm really excited about.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. Okay, then what stand out with Better Brain is that you're not positioning it as just another AI tool, but more as a foundation company that build on. When you explain Better Brain to someone outside of AI space, how do you describe what you actually do and who you help?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same, right? The way I explain it to people in AI versus out of AI, it's always just it comes down to the business problem, right? We help companies solve business problems by implementing technology and AI solutions. So whether that's products that we built or custom solutions doesn't matter. Um, yeah.
Okay. And why did you choose this hybrid model instead of a pure SaaS?
Yeah, it's basically what I mentioned earlier. I think it's really important to be able to integrate what you build very closely with a company's existing workflows and processes, right? And so the only way to do that is you need to have some sort of services component because every company does things in very different ways. So how do you make it as seamless as possible for the end users to get value out of what you build um, without having to change their behavior significantly?
Okay. Yeah, I love it. And which type of client gets the most value today?
It's a good question. I would say clients that have a lot of data. So clients that have a lot of data, a lot of manual processes around that data, those are the clients that I think really benefit the most from a lot of what's happening in the AI world. Uh, and I mean, there are some crazy examples everywhere right now with people who there's like massive amounts of man hours being put into certain workflows, certain tasks that a lot of these solutions can, significantly reduce a lot of that time. And so I think focusing on kind of the real impact there is really important.
Yeah, makes sense. What part of your system create the most leverage for your clients?
Yeah, I would say I think honestly, there's two major things that I would say create a lot of leverage. One is the data infrastructure side of what we do, because obviously a lot of companies, their data just isn't ready for use by some of these systems. And so part of what we do is help a company get its data ready to be used by AI systems, right? And so what that means depends on the use case, the company, and all that. But I think that initial piece of getting their data ready makes I mean, there's a ton of use cases that go beyond what you can do with AI, right? There's the AI use cases, but then like basic reporting, basic analytics, all that stuff is still kind of on the table and can add a lot of value for a lot of companies. Um, and then I would say the second thing is workflow automation. So a lot of times people are kind of working in a bunch of different tools. They're putting, data, they're moving data from one place to another. And a lot of it's manual today. And so a lot of the workflow automation stuff that we do, I think creates a lot of leverage for our customers.
Yeah, awesome. Building AI infrastructure and delivering real incomes is very different from running experiments or demos. Right now, what feels like the hardest part of running and scaling BetterBrain?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think one of the things where we're trying to strike the right balance is how low touch, high touch should we be, and how do we balance that with scalability, right? And I think there's ways like we've done a lot to kind of improve the scalability of the services side of what we do. Uh, but I would say that's like the biggest balance to find. How do you scale uh, in a way where the services side is still scalable and not 100% kind of manual, but still have kind of that high touch relationship with the client. And so there's a bunch of kind of potential AI solutions to that. But that's one of the big things that we've started to think about over the past couple months.
Okay, yeah, and there's always friction somewhere. Is it more on the product side, the sales side, or delivery side?
I don't think it's on the engineering side. I think it's primarily on the client relationship, customer management side of things, because we're fairly high touch on all that. We do a lot of strategy work. Uh, I mean, we really act as kind of the AI partner for a lot of our customers, where we're not just a vendor. We're not just selling them software. We're not just building them something custom and then leaving them out to dry. We're actually working with them day in, day out to make sure that it's actually solving the problem for them and identifying other use cases, other problems that we can help them solve. Right. And so I think with the kind of custom nature of that, the that strategy component, how do you scale that? That's like one of the big things that we've been thinking about. And we have a few ideas, but we'll talk about that next time.
Okay, what has changed recently that made things more complex?
I think generally speaking, things are getting simpler and simpler, right? A lot of problems are getting easier and easier to solve. Um,
Strangely,
yeah, right.
yeah.
I think I think one of the considerations is, I mean, there's a lot of noise in the AI world. There's a lot of companies that uh, kind of say they'll do something, but maybe can't necessarily deliver on that, especially from a product point of view. Because, I mean, it's really hard to promise outcomes as a product company, right? If you have just a product and then you don't really interact with the client that much, it's really hard to deliver on a promise uh, of an outcome, right? Because the client's outcomes are based on their existing processes. Um, and so if you don't understand the processes well enough, how can you guarantee an outcome, right? That's kind of the idea there. So I think there's a lot of noise. I think people get turned off by certain things, and so then there's a bit of education that needs to be done about, if Copilot didn't work for you because it couldn't understand your process, that doesn't mean all AI solutions are bad. It just means that you need to give it more context, and you need to sort of encode that nuance in your business into the solution so that I can understand some of that, right? And so I think just just showing people that, just because one AI solution doesn't work doesn't mean AI is bad. It just means that um, maybe the way that you're implementing it could be improved.
Yeah, yeah, of course, it makes sense. Yeah, you're working directly with companies trying to implement AI in real workflows, so you see what works and what doesn't.
Mhm.
From your vantage point, what shift in enterprise AI matters most right now, but is still underappreciated?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the big one is people are moving from like using AI to fetch information and get information more quickly and easily to actually taking actions on the user's behalf. I think there's a lot of things to think about there because some actions are a lot riskier than others. Um, some actions are harder to take than others, and so on and so forth. For some things, you want to ask for approval. For some things, you don't. And so there's a whole class of problems that we're starting to solve where the customer wants the system to actually take action on their behalf rather than just fetch information for them. Right, and different people are at different stages. Some people were at that stage a year ago. Some people won't be at that stage for the next year. So,
Yeah.
um, I mean, there's a big discrepancy, I think, between folks who are really ahead of the eight ball there, and folks who aren't.
Yeah. If what are companies getting wrong about AI adoption today?
I think AI adoption up to this point, a lot of it has been considered a change management problem. I don't think it's primarily a change management problem. I think it's primarily a technology problem, right? How do you make it really easy for people to how do you make these things fit into their workflows and their processes so that they don't have to change their behavior, right? This is a big thing that I harp on because I think it's so important that you build these solutions in a way where they fit seamlessly into a person's existing workflows or processes, right? If you build like a RAG chatbot for a company and you don't if you put together a RAG chatbot for a company and you don't tell them uh sorry, you don't explain kind of the how they're expected to use it, and they have to go to a separate website to actually start using it, then a lot of people just won't open the website. Like that's friction, right? Like just having to open a separate website is friction. And so if you can put that Brag chatbot into a tool that they're already using every day, their CRM or something like that, that's a lot more powerful, right? Because then they see it every day. They say, okay, I just have to click this button to get access to this. And so there's things like that that we really try to optimize for.
Yeah, that makes sense. Uh, where do you see the biggest gap between expectation and reality?
Uh, I think So there's a saying that I really like. People tend to overestimate the impact of most innovations in the short term and underestimate the impact in the long term. And I think that's very true with what we're seeing in AI today. I think I think a lot of the gap comes from people having very high expectations of what out of the box systems can do for them. So, for example, like being able to properly analyze all sorts of different types of Excel sheets is a really hard task. It's not easy to be able to do that, right? But a lot of people kind of are of the opinion, oh, I can just throw anything at AI. I can just throw all my documents at AI and it'll just be able to figure it out. That's not how it works, right? There's something happening behind the scenes, and that thing may or may not be able to do the tasks that you want it to in an accurate way. Um, Simple example, n- and this is something that we talk about all the time with customers, but there's a difference between structured and unstructured data, right? With structured data, you could have a billion rows of data and you don't want to index that, right? If you want to be able to answer a question like how many of whatever, right? If you want to answer a question that starts with how many, you need an accurate answer. And to get that accurate answer, you need structured data. You need to write a SQL query on top of that structured data, right? If you just index, if you build like a RAG solution on top of those billion rows of data, that RAG solution is not going to be able to find all instances uh, that meet kind of your filter, right? And so there's this whole there's a lot of kind of nuance in these things, and the way that you architect these systems really matters in the use cases you can solve for and so on and so forth. And this is a conversation that we have with customers all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe you. I love it, and you mentioned that BetterBrain is already profitable and focus on building a sustainable business. Looking ahead, 12 to 18 months, what does success realistically look like for BetterBrain?
Yeah, I think doubling down on some of the larger partnerships that we're working on, and one of the things we're looking to do is also we have all these kind of off the shelf solutions, start to push some of those off the shelf solutions a little bit more, um, along with the customization, of course. I think the customization is very important, but starting to push that more. Um, and then I think the third thing is really unlocking how do we scale delivery, right? How like scaling engineering is fairly straightforward. We have a fairly large pool of engineers that we pull from. But I think the question on my side is how you scale the client relationship side of things, right? Um, Without, adding headcount linearly the way that a consulting firm does. And so I think that's going to be one of the big unlocks. We're working on some stuff there and I'm really excited about it. So I think that's going to be one of the big unlocks over the next year or so.
Wonderful, congratulations! And you are you focusing on specific industries or staying abroad? Abroad?
Yeah, we're industry agnostic. So I mean, a lot of these solutions look very different across different industries, but a lot of the underlying tech is the same. And we're in the business of building that underlying tech and then customizing on top of it to deliver the end solution as needed. Right. So for that reason, we're industry agnostic. And yeah, we do work globally. So we're doing work in in almost every region you can think of right now.
Okay. And what are you deliberately choosing not to do?
Work with software companies. We typically do not work with pure play software companies, just because I mean a lot of this stuff they should be able to build in house, and we've just found that the value in what we do is much higher for non software companies that don't really have a lot of that expertise.
Yeah, Makes sense. Like it. You are you're working at the intersection of AI, operation, and business outcome, which is where many companies struggle. And based on what you have learned so far, um, what should operators or funders do differently when trying to implement AI in their business?
Yeah. Um, I would say I would say thinking very deeply, not just implementing AI for the sake of implementing AI. I would say you should have a strong business problem in mind. You need to, it's the same as implementing any other piece of software, right? You need to be able to make the ROI case. You need to be able to point to why this is going to save you time, save you money, or make you more money. Um, and then I think also one of the big things is assessing risk, right? It's really important to assess risk of uh, fully automating a particular solution or augmenting humans in a particular solution, because if you're in the healthcare space and you want to fully automate, um say you want to generate automated recommendations of medication and just send that to the patient, that's really risky, right? Because if you're recommending the wrong medicine, you could kill somebody, right? And so you would never do that. You would never want to automate that process. You would always want a human making the final decision. Same with a lot of kind of banking use cases, right? You would always want the human making the final decision. But what you can do is you can give them all the information that they need to make the most accurate decision possible. And you just need to make sure that that information is traceable. It should be auditable. A human should be able to point to it and understand exactly where that came from. And if they can do that, then I think that's where these things start to get really useful and risky use cases. For use cases that are less risky, where it doesn't matter if you're wrong 30% of the time or 20% of the time, I mean, in those situations, by all means, like automation is totally fine, right? You can probably get very high accuracy for those use cases, 95 plus percent, and that is sufficient, right? And so I think just assessing kind of the risks, the different types of use cases and what that means in practical terms, what are the kind of externalities, both positive and negative, that come from that, um, I think is really important to look at.
Yeah, I really love it. What you said, it makes a lot of sense. What habit or mindset creates the biggest advantage for you?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think there's a really good YC video about luck. I think it was by Dalton or someone. But one of the things that I think has served me well is just increasing my surface area for luck. People call it different things. Some call it engineering serendipity, but I think at a high level, you can engineer luck in some ways, right? You can't guarantee outcomes, but you can engineer luck, where you just need to put yourself in the right situation at the right times. Um, I mean, I'll be honest, like I've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of conversations over the past year uh to find, a small set of uh really strong partners and clients and things like that. So anyways, I think just putting yourself in the right positions is really important.
Okay, that's very interesting. Okay, what what will you do differently if you started again today?
It's a good question. I think I would probably start with this model earlier, the hybrid model. I think I would probably start with that earlier. Um, yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's one big thing, and then I think outside of that, um, really just kind of nailing down a distribution strategy. I mean, this is something that we always thought a lot about, but I think really nailing down a distribution strategy that worked, maybe even going more vertical specific early on, um, from a go to market perspective would have been interesting. But lots of things learned over the past couple of years.
For sure, for sure. Congratulations. Abhishek, thank you so much for joining. Very strong insight into your journey, your industry, and the work you are doing at BetterBrain. Thank you so much for taking the time, Abhishek. It was
Yep,
great.
thank you. Really appreciate it and really enjoyed the conversation, and I'll look forward to the next one.
Yeah, definitely. I hope we definitely need to do a next one. Where do people can people find you or your work? Uh, Anywhere.
Yeah, shoot me an email, at abhishek at betterbrain.ai or shoot me a message on LinkedIn.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. It was great. Thank you. Love it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And that's it for today's episode of AI Interconnect. If you enjoyed, share it with someone who's building the future, or better yet, someone who should be. And until next time, stay curious, stay creative, and keep building. Thank you. Abhishek. Bye.